Bonjour, good afternoon, everybody. So you heard from Young some of these really important implications about how much more data there'll be and how that data has sources in all of the areas that our lives are involved with, in the industrial devices that we work with in our factories, in the health sensors that we each of us have in our homes and about our bodies, and in the places that we live domestically amongst our daily lives. All of these sources of data are going to be generating vast volumes of data, and yet extracting that data to get information from it is a really significant challenge. And protecting the right data and ensuring that only the correct information is shared with other people is also a challenge. The benefits of cloud computing, the shared ecosystem of servers which allow us all to carry supercomputers in our pocket and rely on even bigger computers in the cloud, depend on sharing things in terms of the networks and the computer hardware with other people at the same time who may be our competitors or our neighbors or even people that we wouldn't count as friends. So to protect that data, we need to ensure that we can defend it properly. And the challenges of cybersecurity are a natural side effect of the benefits of the new data economy. So I'm really going to spend my time just telling you about what I believe are some of both those challenges in a bit more detail, and also some of the opportunities which flow from that. Because the good news is that all of this data has tremendous benefits in enabling us to get machines to do some of the work for us. Artificial intelligence or machine learning is really driven by that data. And so the opportunity to get machines to extract information from the data depends on the data as fuel. At the same time, we're going to want to control who has access to what data. And we're going to want to protect our own machines, our own networks, our own infrastructure from the wrong people getting access. And this is really the core of my talk. So what's new in the cybersecurity challenge? Why wasn't this a problem in the past? The thing that's really changed is that we used to think about keeping the bad guys out of our devices and our networks and our data centers. And that landscape has evolved significantly because nowadays the whole of our way of working is different. It's portable. We have these smartphones which we take everywhere with us, and they're connected by radios which pass through walls. So the idea that you are going to keep all of the sensitive information inside an organization is no longer really a meaningful idea. We carry our devices with us everywhere, and we actually want to be able to use our data everywhere. So keeping it locked up is no longer a rational idea. On the other hand, we also want to partner. We want to be able to share that data selectively, and we want our customers and our supply chain partners and our friends to be able to access that data in a selective way. So we need to be able to actually build a model of exchange of information which is permeable, which doesn't rely on locking data up completely. Finally, the threat environment has changed. The bad guys are different. It used to be that there were some amusing stories about teenage hackers who were trying to break into networks for fun. Now, on a regular basis, we're experiencing not just teenage hackers, but criminals who are really trying to steal financial data or data they can trade for financial gain, and state actors, whole countries who are actually devoting themselves to trying to get access to intellectual property and to personal information. And those kinds of attacks take a lot of forms. We're all having to become cybersecurity experts. Now we have to think about whether to click on links in email, whether something is trying to actually fool us into entering our password in the wrong place. And so we're all forced to confront the reality of cybersecurity on a daily basis. This is hard work. Nobody's born understanding cybersecurity. And so this evolution of the threat environment is really a problem that we're all having to confront, young or old, computer literate or not so literate. So building human systems that enable us to work more effectively with our personal information and keep the control that we need of it whilst keeping the bad guys out remains a problem, but it's also a problem which takes a different form from the way it did in the past. So I see the opportunity to apply the data that we're collecting from all these sources and get machines to help us to deliver solutions. Artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms are powered by data. The automatic identification of the bad guys on networks is an example of something which machines can do. And actually, all kinds of applications for machines in these situations spring from the fact that the data is so rich and there's such a great volume of it that it's possible to actually extract the trends, to detect the signals, and to be able to flag up the alerts before some of the bad stuff happens. So we actually can build systems which extract information about the attacks and use them for defense. Interestingly, this is very analogous to how our own bodies work. The idea of an immune system in our body which understands when a foreign microbe has entered our bloodstream and adapts its response to that is an accepted feature of humans, and now we can start to import some of these ideas into the IT field and use them to enhance the security of our systems. We're already starting to see the demand for this kind of functionality, not just in the more negative territory of attackers, but also in some of the positive areas, things like discovering where all our sensitive information is located. One of the problems with the vast amount of data which we generate and which we keep is that often we actually simply can't find the information we care about. Europe is really leading the world in the legislation around the protection of personal information. And the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, empowers us all as people to control our personal data and to require organizations to treat our data appropriately. But in fact, one of the problems that those organizations will have in responding to our requirements is the same problem that most of us have on a daily basis at home. It's hard to find the thing you're looking for when you have so much data. And the good news is that machine learning can help with this. The problem of data discovery and data classification is one which companies such as Exonar have already started to tackle. They crawl the network or through the file system of your computer, and they actually classify all of the files that they find, reading the contents of each file, and build a structure which you can review to allow you to locate where the information you're really looking for is to be found. And in large corporations, although it's not always easy to admit, sometimes corporations have personal information and they genuinely don't know where it's stored or how many copies of it have been kept. But to comply with the General Data Protection Regulation, it's necessary to be able to answer these questions and to deliver all of that information back to a person who requests it. So finding that kind of machine learning technology helping us solve this problem is an immensely positive step in improving security. We can also use the same kind of models of classifying information by watching the trends to detect attackers in the traditional defensive sense. And a company like Cyberlytic builds this threat classification engine by watching the traffic on the network. It's been trained, and machine learning algorithms have understood what different types of attack look like, and now they can alert human operators very quickly when the enemy is already inside the network and moving around trying to extract sensitive data. This idea of helping the system to actually evolve its responses is one which companies like Darktrace have pursued. Darktrace builds the immune system style response to the attacker and allows human operators to know when evolving threats are occurring. And that's already something which they offer at the current product generation that they have. But in the future, they'll actually use that to inform a third type of solution, an offensive solution which actually reacts and responds to the attack and uses the data it's collected to extract information about the nature of the threat and then direct an appropriate response right back at the attacker. So that kind of counter-responsive solution is a really exciting way that we can get the machines to help us to solve these problems. Now, clearly, in the future, we're going to see continuing evolution of the data-driven economy. And in cybersecurity, we heard earlier Young mentioning some of the particular challenges around things like identity. Here in Europe, we think very carefully about the way our personal information is treated, and we care very much about being able to decide for ourselves how that data is handled. It's mainly US-based companies which have a different mindset around personal data that currently dominate the way a lot of our social networks and economic businesses on the internet work. So thinking about improving the demarcation between identity and data protection and perhaps helping Europe to continue to raise the standard that all countries in the world follow in personal data protection is a really interesting opportunity for startup businesses based here in Europe. Our banking regulations are demanding better standards of authentication. It's too easy for the wrong people to get access to our financial transactions, and the process of moving away from just using passwords to evolving things like multi-factor authentication is a really important way of improving our defense against that. So biometrics, identifying your personal behavior, facial recognition, such as we see in some recent smartphones, other kinds of behavioral information, which are difficult for machines or opponents to replay, can be powerful ways to help us enhance our security and to get beyond the difficult to remember and often therefore easy to guess by an attacker passwords, which are the traditional model. We have some challenges that go with this. If we're storing personal information like facial data or biometrics, then actually we need to concern ourselves with how secure that information is being kept and whether we're going to be able to rely on the people who are keeping it to keep it a secret. So the very things which might be the key to helping us unlock our own security requirements can also be a cause of new security problems, because access to those databases is so important. And we've seen recently some very unfortunate episodes in the US, Equifax losing significant amounts of data on almost half of the American population because they weren't paying attention to the security challenges. That business has suffered hugely, but it's too late. It doesn't really matter whether the business suffers as a business to the people whose personal information has been lost. So I think solutions which employ new technologies, things like the blockchain, can help us to collect that data and store it in ways where we can actually control the access to it much more robustly in the first place. And we're seeing businesses like VeChain building solutions around personal identification information, which can then be used in new domains without requiring us to re-enroll many times for many different applications. There are also important trends just in how artificial intelligence is working. We've seen in the past businesses like DeepMind using very large amounts of data to train, for example, machines to be good at games, in fact, to be better than humans at games. And even the pace of evolution of DeepMind's own activities has been exponentially increasing. But different kinds of machine learning technology, like reinforcement learning, are actually allowing much quicker training solutions to be delivered so that it's not necessary to crunch through such large amounts of data over such a long period of time to get to the same quality of results. And we see companies like Prowler, which are doing this, which are modeling the behavior of, for example, the way vehicles move in cities to ensure that we can reduce congestion, but doing that using much, much smaller amounts of training data than ever before. And I mentioned earlier that we can expect to see artificial intelligence used to provide solutions for cybersecurity. But the extreme case of that is that we actually expect to see machines combating machines. Artificial intelligence is actually tackling each other. And clearly we need to think about some of the implications of that at an ethical level. Just as we concern ourselves with whether, for example, weapons are allowed to be developed in certain directions, same kind of problems apply in the artificial intelligence domain when it comes to thinking about artificial intelligences attacking each other. So thinking about these things now and building the appropriate legislation and ethical controls is one of the really important things we need to do to anticipate the way the future will evolve in artificial intelligence. So I just wanted to wrap up by really reminding you that cybersecurity is considerably more complicated today than it's been before, and we're all bringing our own devices. The bring your own device culture, BYOD culture, means that actually all of our organizations and all of our personal lives are penetrated with holes through which data can leak. So we need to think about the bigger picture of how we protect our data. The attackers are already much more sophisticated than they used to be, and they're using tools like artificial intelligence to help them to carry out their attacks. So we have to assume that they're already inside our networks and act accordingly. We have to give up on the idea that we're going to keep the bad guys out, and we have to think about where is our critical data and how we're going to keep it protected. The good news is that artificial intelligence has huge potential to help us spot the anomalies, to detect what's going wrong, and also to help us to develop the antibodies to actually deliver the solutions. And Europe is an immensely innovative region, particularly in this area. Artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities in our academic institutions and our corporations are among the best in the world and actually have a scale which is unmatched almost anywhere in the world. So we have the capability to leverage that expertise, to leverage the huge amounts of data that we have, and to enable ourselves to actually build solutions for the future which capitalize on the benefits of all of that data and keep it secure. So I think that's an exciting challenge for all of us who are supporting entrepreneurs, as I do as an investor, or who are entrepreneurs who are building these businesses of the future. And I'm really pleased that Samsung takes so seriously these opportunities and is supporting all of us in this venture. So I thank you for welcoming me here today, and I appreciate your time.